Yep. So we are live. So hi Rashi. Thank you so much
Hi,
for
ma'am.
asking the question about assessment. And thank you for attempting the scavenger hunt. And thank you, Srilu, also, and Vichitra. I know there are quite a few people who have tried the scavenger hunt. Now, in order to complete the scavenger hunt, you need to refer to the document called MYP from principle into practice. Okay. And I understand that those who are new, you will find it a little challenging to finish all the clues because you will get stuck in wherein you have to talk about assessments and ATLs, which you are not, clear about if you have not taught the MYP. So I understand, Rashi, that you found it quite challenging to move ahead because criterion-based assessment is very specific to the MYP program. Yeah. So, because
Right.
you were talking about criterion-based assessment, how it is, and you have taught the CBSE and ICSE.
I see. Yeah.
So it is quite different from the assessments in the CBSE and ICSE. Okay. So let me go through
Right.
how assessments look in the MYP. I will share my presentation. All right. Can you see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
uh, the main objective of today's session would be to understand what is formative assessment, what is summative assessment. It looks quite different from what it is in the CBSE. Okay. Now maybe if the thinking and if the understanding of those terms have changed, then I don't know. But earlier in CBSE, when they say formative assessment, it was unit test, and if it was summative assessment, it was like end of semester big exam. Okay, but it is different here. We will also learn about the different criteria in the MYP. We will know more about the MYP command terms. These command terms are similar to Bloom taxonomy verbs, and we will discover how ATLs help us in assessment. Yeah, so these are the objectives of today's session. So, according to the assessment philosophy of MYP, these are the purpose of assessment. First one is to inform and to improve teaching. Okay. Uh, the formative assessment, especially, it is for the teachers to know how much your students have understood. And because of that, you will be able to improve your teaching. And so that most of your students or all of your students are able to understand what you are trying to teach them. Yeah. The second purpose is to promote positive student attitude towards learning. Okay, so though it is assessment, they are very necessary to to ensure and to make sure that learning has happened. How will you know that student has learned something? Only when you take some assessments. Uh, Assessments also help to promote deep understanding of the subject matter. You will get to know whether the students have understood what you are trying to teach, the concepts and the content of the particular subject that you are teaching. It also helps in the development of higher order thinking skills. So if you ask questions like analysis, where the students have to give their point of view, okay, opinion, not just opinion, if there is a claim, if they are able to explain that claim with evidence, then you know that the students are using higher order thinking skills. Yeah. Now, assessments also help to develop approaches to learning skills. That is, you will know how to develop students, how to learn different skills. Okay. Uh, Assessment helps us to report on current student achievement, at what level they are presently. Okay. So when we do assessment, then you will know the student achievement level. And it also gives you evidence which will help the students to set future goals. Okay, so these are all the purposes of assessment or why you need to take assessments in the MYP. Now, the philosophy of MYP assessment is, explained very nicely through this cartoon strip. So here it says that for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. So everybody has to climb the tree. Now you can see that different students, different animals have different abilities. Not everybody can climb that tree, right? So an examination or an assessment has to be fair so that everyone can participate in it. So we know that all students have different strengths and different abilities. Okay. And if the assessment tasks are similar, if you have only one type of assessment task, then it is not fair to all our students. So in the MYP, the assessment tasks look very different in different subjects. Okay, so you assess different skills in different subjects. So if you look at science, you will look at investigation skills, investigative skills. Okay, if you look at language acquisition, you will have speaking, listening skills. Okay, if you look at humanities, individuals and societies, over there you will have critical thinking skills. Again, whether the students know how to create a research question. Okay, investigative skills. So and in the arts, if you see, you will know whether the students know how to critique an art piece
Critical
or
and creative thinking skills.
yes. So those skills are, assessed. So different subjects have different assessment tasks. Okay. And these assessment tasks will allow the students to show their different strengths. Okay. So this is the philosophy of assessment in the MYP. Now, the MYP is a very balanced curriculum framework. Okay, it has 8 subject areas and all subjects are of have equal value. And if you see the diagram, if you see this logo or the model, you see a head in the center, right? So that is the student. The learner is at the center. That means it is the most important thing in the whole framework. Okay, and the MYP assessment is based on what the student can do. Okay, not on what they cannot do. Okay, so these are the main philosophy of the MYP assessments. Now, what is the meaning of criterion related assessment? When I say that MYP assessment is criterion related, that means the process is based on finding out the different levels of achievement based on previously agreed criteria. So every subject has criteria on which they are assessed. So there are 4 criteria and the criteria are named as criterion A, criterion B, criterion C and criterion D. Now I'll show you the names of the different criteria in the different subjects. Okay, there is another tabular column where you will get an idea of what are all the criteria. Now, every subject in the MYP, the personal project and the IDU, okay, they are assessed against criteria. Now, over here, I have written personal project is against 4 assessment criteria, personal project is against 3 criteria. Again, now, IDU and PPR, personal project are assessed against 3 criteria. Now, what happens in these criteria? Okay, over here, it will clarify the assessment processes for the students and it will help the teachers to discuss and clarify their own perspectives of the assessment processes. So each subject will have their explanation of what the criteria is and what is expected in that criteria. What is the subject trying to assess for that particular criteria? So you have criteria A, B, C, and D. Now, these criteria also gives both teacher and students reliable and valid information. And it will let us know how much actual learning has taken place for each student. So now this particular write-up, okay, the information is taken from Principles into Practice. Now, assessment in the MYP happens throughout the unit. So it is continuous assessment, okay, and it will help the teacher and the student in their learning path. So you see over here, when the student goes to the learning path, you have attitude, you have information, what needs practice, what new skills are being developed. Do you need to practice more of those skills? And then what new skill is achieved? So when you go from down to up, you see that there is the learning of the skills, the development of the skills. Now, assessment also helps to reflect on what the student has learned, and it also helps the students to set goals for future learning. And it is not something for a student to be afraid of. Students should not be scared of the assessment, but it should be taken as something that will guide the student through the learning path. So the assessments help the student to as a guidance, okay, in order to learn the subject. Now, assessment happens throughout the unit. It is not a destination, whereas it is a journey. Okay. At the start, the teacher knows what the students know and will tailor the class to the needs of the student. So the first type of assessment that the teacher takes when before he or she starts teaching is a diagnostic test, a provocation, a pre-assessment. Okay, to know how much do their students already know about the concept or the content that the teacher is going to teach. Now, during the unit, whatever assessment takes place, those are formative assessments. Now, what are formative assessments for? It helps to check on students' new knowledge and understanding. Students will get feedbacks on this formative assessment, and this feedback will help them to grow as a learner. So, what kind of assessments are included in formative assessment? It could be quiz, it could be worksheets, it could be discussion activities. You can have exit tickets, you can have visual thinking routines. So, all these can be included in the formative assessment. Now, assessments also happen at the end of the unit. So, whatever happens at the end, okay, is the summative assessments. Here, the students will show the sum of their learning. So when the students do the summative assessment, they do it under exam conditions. Okay. The teacher doesn't give them feedback at that time. We are going to assess the students' learning, what they have learned from, at the end of the unit. And this usually happens at the end of the unit in one or more criteria. Now, depends upon what you're going to assess. If it is going to be a lab report in science, then you will assess on criteria B and C. If you're going to take a test, exam, knowledge and understanding, it would be mostly criteria A. Now, this particular summative assessment will not include multiple choice. Okay, it will not be just multiple choice or standardized tests. It can have multiple choice, but it is only one of the type of assessment task or test questions that you can give. Okay, but these summative assessment can be projects, it can be presentations, you can ask them to write an essay. Like if you look at sciences, criteria D, mostly we ask them to write essays. You can ask them to create video, it can be performances, especially in theater and in PE, it could be a performance that we are assessing. Okay, so this is about the summative assessment. So now formative assessment used throughout the lesson and summative assessment is used at the end of the lesson. All right. Now, what will formative assessment do? It will find out what the student progress is. Okay, you will get to know about student progress. It will inform adaptation. It will let the teacher know whether he or she has to adapt or make changes to what she is teaching. Okay, if the students have not understood, then again you will have to change what you are trying to teach. And formative assessment also helps in focusing instruction. So you can have focused instruction during formative assessment. Now, summative assessment, it will do everything what the formative assessment does, but it will be in exam conditions. You are not going to give them feedback. You will be evaluating and giving a final grade for the student performance. So the summative assessment should also encourage reflection. It should have structured discussion and it will inform development of the student. So this is what formative and summative assessments are. Now, in MYP, how does assessment work? You already heard about me saying that there are 4 criteria, criteria A, B, C, D. What I have done over here, I've taken an example of criterion B of mathematics. Okay, so this is how the rubric looks like on my right hand side. Criterion B, investigating patterns at the end of year 5. This is for grade 10. Students should be able to select and apply mathematical problem solving techniques to discover complex patterns. Describe Describe patterns as general rules consistent with findings. Prove or verify and justify general rules. So these 3 pointers, they are called as assessment strands. Okay, these are the strands of criterion B. And you can see that all these strands are there in 7 and 8. At level 7 and 8, all 3 strands are there. Level 5 and 6, all 3 strands are there. In level 3 and 4, only these 2 strands are there. And in level 1 and 2, only these 2 strands are there. So if you are going to create some questions with level 1 and 2, you should ensure that the questions involve these 2 strands. Okay. And if I'm going to give a question which is of level 7 and 8, it should include all these 3 strands. Okay, so this particular tabular column, it is called as a rubric. Okay, and the rubric is linked to subject objectives. So these are the 3 objectives of mathematics. So these are the assessment objectives. Level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All subjects, all criteria have levels, achievement levels, starting from 1 to 2, ending in 7 to 8, where 7 and 8 is the highest achievement level, 1 to 2 is the lowest achievement level. Now, when I say a student has got 0, that means the student has attempted that question, but is not able to answer any of these strands, assessment objectives. Then the student has 0. If the student is absent, you cannot give a 0. You have to say sick or absent. Okay, a 0 is given only if the student actually gets a 0 in the paper, has attempted it and does not satisfy any of these assessment objectives. Okay, so each level is described what a student can do. So these are all the levels and it includes command terms. So if you see over here, there are certain verbs that are in bold: apply, state, suggest, select and apply, describe, verify, prove, verify, justify. These all are Bloom's taxonomy terms. And these are called command terms in the MYP. And these command terms have specific definitions. Okay. And where will you find the command term definition? In your subject guide at the back in the last few pages. Okay, of the subject guide. So actual definition of the command term is given and students should understand the definition of the command term in order to answer the questions correctly. So the command terms, understanding of the command terms is very important. So when students do get grades, what do you need to remember? You need to remember that grades do not reflect who your student is as a learner. Okay, it doesn't tell you who the student is, but where they are in their learning journey. Okay, and where is always temporary. That means that grade level what the student has achieved is temporary. The student can improve from that level to the next level. Okay, so the grades will not tell you who the student is as a learner, but it will just tell you where they are in their learning journey. And this journey is temporary. The student can improve in their assessment grades. So this is the assessment criteria which are there. And this I have taken from one presentation made by Mr. Stephen Tyler. He is one of the MYP educators, science educators in a school in China. He has a lot of information on his blog. So if you say Stephen Taylor MYP Science, you will find it. And in this particular presentation that he has created, he has put all the assessment criteria headings of each of the assessment criteria of all the subjects. So I've just taken it from there. So you can see that language and literature have 4 criteria. Criteria A is analyzing, criteria B is organizing, criterion C is producing text, and criterion D is using language. For me, I teach sciences. Criterion A is knowledge and understanding. So over here in knowledge and understanding, most of the time we give tests. Okay, but then also you can give projects based on knowledge and understanding. Inquiring and designing is writing a lab report right from research, what the student is going to find out, till method. Okay. Criteria C, processing and evaluating. Here, the student has to draw data, process data, collect the data after doing the experiment, and then make conclusion and evaluate the results. Okay, so that is criteria C. So B and C are for lab reports, and criterion D, reflecting on the impacts of science. It is about how science, the inventions have helped, and how different factors affect it. Okay, so suppose if you're going to talk about designer babies, okay, reproduction is a topic where most of the time I cannot do a lab report, so I mostly give them a research report. So if I talk about designer babies, then I will ask them to write about ethical factor, whether it is ethical to have designer babies. Okay, we can talk about economical factor. Okay, we can talk about uh, social factor. Okay, so you talk about different factors in this particular criteria. Same way for mathematics, knowing and understanding is a test. Investigating patterns, here you give them an exploration where you can tell them, okay, this is the pattern. You give them different patterns and say, what is the next pattern going to be? Okay, so those kind of explorations are given. And this particular criteria, if the students do well in MYP, then their IA in the DP is sorted. Okay, so communicating and investigating patterns help the students to do their IA, even applying mathematics in real world context, because you will be using some real world examples in order to do your IA, right? So these 3 criteria B, C, D, will help the students in writing their IAs in the diploma program. Same way, the other subjects also have 4 criteria each. Arts has investigating, developing, creating or performing, evaluating. Physical and health education has knowing and understanding, planning for performance, applying and performing, reflecting and improving. Personal project has 3 criteria: planning, applying skills, and reflecting. Interdisciplinary learning or IDU has 3 criteria: evaluating, synthesizing, and reflecting. And you assess these things on these criteria. So all subjects have 4 criteria, personal project and IDU have 3 criteria. Any questions? No question?
Ma'am,
Yeah.
how is a personal project different from the projects that we do in, for example, language, literature, or sciences?
I will go into detail. Good question. I'll answer it later. Okay? Okay.
Okay, okay.
Now, how might students be assessed? So you are assessed on the 4 criteria. If it is knowing, okay, criterion A is about knowing, likely to be assessed through a test, okay, mostly test, or you can have a presentation, essay, report, interview. Criterion B is about doing, okay, it's the skill of doing, usually through a process, investigating, building skills, okay, where you can be assessed through a planning document or a process journal. So if it is design or if it is art, then the students use a process journal and a planning document. Criterion C, even a lab report, you plan, right? How you're going to do the lab. Criterion C is about sharing, communicating, or thinking, and it is assessed through a performance or presentation or lab report or an essay or a test. And criterion D is about reflecting, evaluating, analysis, responding. And it is most likely to be assessed through process journal, action plan, reflection, or document essay. So here they have given you a brief description about the criterion ABCD. What are we assessing in the 4 different criteria? Okay. Now, assessment criteria, how does it work? So you have already seen this rubric. I had shown it in the
देखा है ना
previous slide also. So when assessing the MYP assessment criteria, what you do is you evaluate the student work against the lowest descriptor. Okay, you evaluate through the lowest descriptor. If the work meets the expectation of level 1 and 2, then you move up to 3 and 4. Okay, and then if the work has achieved 3 and 4, then you move to the next level. So you start grading from the lowest level to the highest level. Now, where a student work doesn't meet all the strands of the criteria, then what will you do? The odd numbered band is typically awarded. So if these all three are not fully satisfied by the answer, then I will give the student a 5. Okay, where the work meets all the expectation of every strand, where this is also achieved, this is also achieved, this is also, then I will give a 6 to the student. Okay, so this is how you grade the task. Okay, now the command terms. When you look at the command terms, the first one, okay, over here, when you see it is state, and then it comes to suggest, then verify, and then justify. You see that you go from a lower order thinking to a higher order of cognition, metacognition. Okay, so if you look at the Bloom's taxonomy also, you start with remembering and then you go high up to creating, right? So same way, the level 1 and 2 will have the lower level Bloom's taxonomy works, and the highest level will have the higher level of Bloom's taxonomy, metacognition. Okay. Now, criterion related, why are we saying? Because it is based on the IB published criteria. So every subject guide will have the published criteria, ABCD. Okay. And what the teachers do is the teachers use the best fit approach. Okay. Now, if you are looking at the question and if you see that, okay, some students have answered questions of the first strand fully, okay, and very few did not meet the uh, part of this particular strand. So then I will give a 1. But it can be such that some very easy questions the students have not answered, but the students have answered all the difficult questions. Then what are you going to give? Is it that the student does not know the uh, lower ability questions? Okay, lower type of lower thinking skill questions. So here what you do is you look at your formative assessments. You would have taken some assessments during teaching learning, right? Over there, if the students have done very well in the lower ability questions, then maybe if I have to decide between 7 and 8, the students, if I have to decide between 6 or 7, and the students have done really very well, then maybe I will give the student a 7. Why? Because it's the best fit. The student has the ability and has shown most of it. So based on the formative assessment at the level of the student, uh, of performance of the student right now, I may decide to give a 7 and not a 6. So therefore, you should have enough evidence to prove your best fit. Okay, it is professional judgment. So there is no normed reference comparison. There is no bell curve or rankings if you are going to do criterion based assessment. Okay, so it's not like a 10 on 10 or 5 or 10. There are no marks. These are different levels. Now, what is important there? Your 7 may not be my 7, right? So that's why what you need to do is moderation. After you have assessed the student work, okay, then you have to meet with a teacher of that same department and you pick pieces of work. You pick one very good work, one poor work, and two mediocre level works. You remove all the gradings, just let your feedback be there, and then you give it to the teacher and you say that, okay, now you grade and you tell me what grade the student should have. So if the teacher has given 5 and you have given 6, then you need to have that conversation with the teacher why you have given 6, or the teacher will tell why it should be a 5. And you should come to a common understanding and say that, oh no, maybe I've been too lenient and it should have been a 5, and then I change my grade to 5. This process is called as moderation and it is very important so that all teachers are on the same page. Your 5 is also my 5, and we have this understanding that a 5, how does a 5 look like? Okay. So what happens during moderation is individual teachers first independently assess their work, and then they compare marks with their colleagues, the achievement levels with their colleagues, and through professional discussions, okay, and they will then determine the student's final level of achievement. So if I feel that, okay, in the 4 samples I have graded very leniently, so then if I am going to mark down my grades, then all the other students also I will have to relook at and mark it down. But if I feel that, okay, the other teacher and I both have the same understanding and both have marked same, then the grades remain same. Okay. So this moderation of assessment is very important in the MYP. Now, MYP assessment overall subject grades. Now, we know that all criteria are graded up to 8. Okay, the highest achievement level is 8. So 8 FOSA is 32. So you get a number out of 32. So suppose if I have got 5, 5, 5, 5, 20 out of 32, then I will have to check with my grade boundary to establish an overall grade out of 7. Okay, so now how does it look like? How will I know what is a 7? So this is the grade boundary. Okay, I told you, right? 5, 5, 5, 5, I've got 20. So 20 out of 32 is how much? A 5 out of 7. So the overall grade that I get in sciences, okay, is a 5 out of 7 because I've got 20 and it's between this, right? And this is the descriptor for this particular 5 level. So if I have to write a report, okay, about the overall grade, then I may use information over here and I can write it. Okay. So this is best fit. So suppose I have I have
from head to toe. Between this pocket west, part west, singlet west, and the
someone
third is
needs
she.
to mute. Okay. So if I have 3 tasks and these are the grades that I have achieved, okay. So tell me how much will I give in criterion A? Who can answer? In one task I've got a 4, in another task I've got a 6, in the third task I got a 6. What will be the best fit? How much will you give me? Anybody?
Ma'am, can you repeat the question?
If you look at this table, okay, a student has done 3 tasks. In one task in criteria A, I have got 4. In the second task, I've got a 6. In the third task, I've got a 6. What will be my best fit? How much do I give for criteria A? Do I give 4? Do I give 6? Do I give 6? What is the final grade? Final achievement level. How much should I give?
Because in 2, he got almost 6, no, ma'am. So it will be around 6.
Okay, so you can give a 6, you can give a 5, but it will not be a 4.
Yes.
Yeah. Over
Yes.
here it is easy, right? 4, 4, 4, 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here it is 5, 4, 5. What will you give?
5.
Maybe a 4. I don't know. Maybe this was too easy. The 5 was too easy. Many students have got a 5. Okay. So here, that's why the best fit approach, you have to see what is the context. How did the students score? How was the test? Okay.
Also, like
Here,
you said, maybe we have to look at how they did in the formative.
correct. So
Right.
here in criteria D also, he's got a 5, 7, and 6. Now, what am I going to give? Am I going to give 5? Am I going to give 7? Am I going to give 6? So in order to come to a final level, I will have to see my formative, as well as I have to see at what level the student is performing right now. Okay. So if the student is a 6, I give a 6. If the student is a 7, then I can also give him a 7. Okay. And then you add all these numbers and then you come with the final grade total, and then you compare over here and you come with the overall grade. Clear?
This can also depend on the task, level of task, right, ma'am?
So that's what you have to
Best
see
fit.
also how the
Mhm.
students have performed.
Performed,
If
yes.
everybody has got a 777, that means your test
Yeah.
was not good. It was
Yes.
not
It's not
a very good assessment.
up to
And
the
if
level.
all the students have got 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, again, it's not fair,
Correct.
right? So you have to. So that's why when you create an assessment task also, there has to be standardization. You need to show it to the other members of your staff also to see that, okay, whether this is a good assessment.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
So the standardization of assessment is before you deliver, before you give it, okay, to see whether everybody agrees on the task. It has all the levels, and also moderation after the assessment is done, whether the gradings are according to, similar understanding. Okay. So what are the rules of assessment? It has to be school specific. Students shouldn't have more than 3 assessment tasks per week. Okay. Now this is school specific. Okay. You can create your own rules about assessments. 2-week turnaround for teachers to hand back marked assessments. It's very important that you have to return the assessed work to your students. So this is a good idea to have it in your assessment policy. When will you return the feedback? Semester grades. Okay. Achievement grades are ongoing and loaded on assessment record sheets. The responsibility and student agency. Okay. This is based on what the students could do to self-advocate if they don't know what to do, want to question their grade. Okay. So there is this complaints policy also, right? If the student says, no, this is not fair, then what is the complaint policy? Can they go and talk to the teacher? Can they go and talk to the coordinator? What is it? This would also include questions about what students are doing to find success. So responsibility and student agency is also important. Now, assessment recording and reporting, unit by unit reporting, individual MYP criterion, 0 to 8. In criteria A, how much, B, how much, C, how much, D, how much, okay? Written descriptors of the achievement. The uploaded pieces of student learning should be there on Toddle or Manage by or whatever LMS you are using. Semester 1 and semester 2 summary report card, and 3-way conferences, PTSM, parent teacher student meeting. Usually in other schools, you have parent teacher meeting, but here you have the student also. Okay. At each semester's midpoint. Midpoint means in mid semester. So if your semester starts from August, July to December, then there has to be one meeting in September. Okay. So that the teacher can say that, okay, this is how your child is doing. This is how the student is doing. Now need to focus on this particular criteria, these things. Okay. So that the end of semester report is not a surprise to the parents. I, as a coordinator, would always tell my teachers that you cannot fail a student if you have not informed the parents. So that reporting is very important. Letting the parents know of student progress is very, very important. You cannot give a 2 or a 3 if you have not informed the parent about the student's performance. Okay, so this is very important. Now, how might ATL skills help students with MYP assessment? Now, we know that if the students are able to manage time well, then they will finish their assessments on time. Okay. If it is a group work, then they should know how to work on their social skills. If it is criteria D task, most of the time for math, for science, for humanities, then research skills. If their research skills are good, then only they will be doing very well in those criteria. Of course, thinking and communication come in all assessments because the students have to communicate either in oral presentation or in their written assessments. And also the thinking because they would be using critical thinking skills in order to answer their questions. So all the skills are being developed and they help in the assessments. Now, example of how ATLs might help in assessment: communication, carefully reading through the task instruction, reading skills, thinking, using command terms to make sure that you are producing the highest quality work you can, reflecting on the formative work before summative assessments, because the teacher would have taught skills and given you feedback, and those same skills you will be using for your summative. Research skills, criterion A is usually looking for you to gain new knowledge through researching. Self-management, balancing your workload and not getting stressed. Social, giving and receiving feedback from your classmates to help improve work. So these are the examples how ATL helps in assessments. Okay. Do you have any questions? And did some questions get solved, Rashi?
Yeah, a lot, many questions, ma'am. So many questions.
Okay, good. That means I did a good job.
Yeah, definitely.
Acha.
There
Any
are
other
so many
questions? Then we'll talk about personal project. Yeah, Tilakshmi.
Yeah.
No, so I was thinking, now that this new beta trial is coming, is anything in the assessments going to change?
No, no, they are
Same.
not. They are not touching the assessments.
Okay.
It is the conceptual learning. Okay, the concepts, ATLs. What was it?
Inquiry
It
statement.
is, yeah, that comes in this only. Yeah, the inquiry, the first part of the unit planner. So
And
those and community
Global
engagement,
context.
global
Yeah.
context
Global
and
context
community
and community
engagement. Yeah.
engagement.
So if you go to the MYP PRC, there is a separate space over there, and you have a website also for the beta trial. In fact, I was looking at the ATLs today in the morning, checking what all changes are there in ATLs.
Ma'am, so when it is possible, can you please explain it to us next session whenever?
About enhancing.
Yeah.
You should have signed up for the webinars. Then you get the
I
access
did.
to the recording.
I have that. I have it and I'm going through it. But if you can explain, then it is much clearer,
Okay. All right.
especially during the summer because there is more time. We don't have to go to school.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Let me stop. Okay, so